1, and you are now live, Chair.
Yeah, okay. Right, good evening. My name is Councillor Richard Foote, and I'm the chair of the Licensing Committee. It's now 14 minutes past 5, and I apologise for the late start, but we had a thunderstorm and a number of other interruptions. So I'd like to welcome you all to this meeting of Hounslow's Licensing Committee. I would like to welcome members of the committee who are sitting this evening, as well as council officers who will be assisting members throughout the meeting. In addition, I'd like to welcome members of the public who are watching this meeting at home. As you all may know, until recently, virtual meetings for council business were not legal. But as a result of the coronavirus pandemic and the quarantine arrangements required by government, the law has recently been changed to let local authorities meet in a virtual way to make decisions. Therefore, this meeting is taking place using the recently introduced government regulations. The way this meeting will work will be that as chair, I will be running the meeting and inviting people to speak. As it is very easy for people to speak over each other in a meeting like this, I will ask each member or officer to speak in turn at the appropriate stage, and then everyone will have a chance. This will mean that there should normally be no need for people to interrupt or ask to speak. However, if a member does have an urgent reason to interject, for example, for a point of order, please do so by turning on your microphone and telling me that you wish to interject. The exception to this will be legal, committee or licensing officers who may turn on their microphone to alert me to any legal, governance or licensing issues that needs addressing, although I would expect this to be a rare occurrence. In addition, we have a producer of the meeting from our ICT department who may also contact me if necessary, but I think this is unlikely if all goes well, as we hope it will. The etiquette for members of the committee and for officers who are expecting to speak will be to mute your microphones and your cameras until you're asked to speak. This means that only one person will be speaking at a time and there will be no background noise, making it easier for us to follow the meeting, also for those watching at home. I will also ask members always to say who they are when they make a contribution and to speak slowly and clearly for the same reason. The Licensing Committee will be making the decisions. Officers of the council will provide assistance and advice as required, but the final decisions will be made by members. Right, there we go. I would like to introduce each of the members here tonight one by one. I will start with myself. My name is Councillor Richard Foote. I'm chair of this committee. I'm also the ward councillor for Hamworth Ward. I will now ask each member to briefly speak to this also. I first call upon Councillor Chowdhury. Could you introduce yourself, Coleman?
Hi, good evening. So my name is Chowdhury. I am a member of this committee and I am the ward councillor for Feltham North Ward.
Thank you, Carmel. And now, Unsa.
Hello, I'm Unsa Chowdhury. I am the ward member for Ostley and Springgrove Ward.
Right. Banda.
Oh, hello, I'm Councillor Barbara and I'm the councillor for Hounslow West Ward.
Thank you, Banda. Richard.
Good evening. I'm Councillor Richard Eason. I'm a member of this committee and a councillor for Ostley and Springgrove Ward.
Adriana.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Adriana George. I'm a Labour councillor for Bedford Ward. Nice to see you. Thank you.
Councillor Gabriella Giles.
Good evening. Thank you, Richard. My name is Councillor Gabriella Giles and I am a councillor for Chiswick Riverside Ward.
Vikram.
Hi Chair, thank you. My name is Councillor Vikram Garwal. I'm a councillor for Hounslow Heath Ward and a member of this panel.
Vishnu?
Thanks, Chair. I'm Councillor Vishnu Gurung. I'm a ward councillor from the Hanok Park ward, and I'm the member of this panel meeting. Thank you.
Surinder?
Hello, I'm Sundar Puriwal. I'm a councillor for Western Central Ward. I'm a member of this committee.
Okay, I'm not sure if you came right the way through on that one because it's only went up live after you finished speaking, Surinder. Would you like to just go over that again?
I'm Surinder Puriwal. I'm a councillor for Heston Central Ward and I'm a member of this committee.
Thank you, Surinder. Rajwendra?
Hello, my name is Raghuvinder Sidhu. I'm a councillor from Bedford Ward and I'm a member of this licensing committee.
Thank you. Karen?
Hello, I'm Karen Smith and I'm a councillor for Hounslow South.
John?
Hello, my name's John Todd. I'm a councillor for Chiswick Homefield and a member of the committee.
Right. Thank you all. I think I just make mention of the fact that councillors Coleman, Chowdhury and councillor Banna Chopra having to connect by phone, so on the screen when they come through, but they are in touch with us. Unfortunately, not everything's working. So, right, if all members can now mute their microphone and videos, and I'll move then to the officers to speak in turn and introduce themselves. So I'll start with Vicky Wallace.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Vicky Wallace and I'm the Assistant Director for Community Enforcement and Regulatory Services. Thank you.
Thank you, Vicky. Andrew?
Thank you, Chair. My name is Andrew Devine. I'm the Regulatory Manager for Community Standards.
And then we have, are you going to introduce Alistair, Vicky?
I think it looks like I am, yes.
Hi, so I thought you were going to introduce me, Vicky. I'm Alistair Turner. I'm the Specialist Licensing Consultant who's been advising the Council on the preparation of the policy. Thank you.
Right, now I'm going to switch to the officers who are representing legal and governance to introduce themselves briefly. So I'll start with Baljeet Verdi.
Good evening. My name is Mr. Baljeet Verdi from HB Public Law, legal advisor to the committee.
And now our two valuable committee officers. Oh, and here comes the rain again.
Hello, I'm Trustbar Sandhu and I'm here from Democratic Services.
Right.
Good
Okay.
evening, Councillor. I'm Kay Duffy. I'm also from Committee Services.
Right. Okay. Right. Can I just check that everyone has muted their microphone and their cameras again? Members of the public are reminded that the agenda and all the reports being considered by the committee tonight can be found on the council website under the Licensing Committee meetings page. So if you want to see them, that's where you may look. I also want to make sure that all the members have their agenda and reports to hand, and please speak now if you've not got them with you. No? Everybody seems to be okay. Right, I would like to remind members of the need to hear all of the evidence in the report we are considering tonight. This means that you should listen to the whole debate. Please don't pop out to milk the cows or exercise the elephants. This is a legal requirement. I will be asking you to confirm you heard the whole debate before you vote on any matter this evening. If you should find you're having technical problems and need to log out of the meeting and come back in again, please let me know immediately, ideally beforehand, but if not, as soon afterwards as possible by turning on your microphone. This would be a permitted interruption, and we can then decide how far we need to recap, if that is necessary, or if the member needs not to vote on the item. Finally, I would like to say that any member of the public listening or watching, thank you for joining us this evening. We hope this meeting will go well, but it's not the first time the Licensing Committee has been run in this way, and we would hopefully there won't be any hitches. Thank you. We'll now move on to the first item on the agenda. Right. Can I ask if there are any apologies for absence? I haven't seen any, I don't think. No?
No, we haven't received any apologies, Chair.
No, okay. Right, the quorum for this meeting is 4 and we are well above that, so congratulations to everybody and thank you for that. I'm now going to ask if there are any declarations of interest or other communications. I'm not quite sure on this particular meeting what would become a declaration of interest, but if you're not sure and you think you might be, please say it now and we can always strike it out afterwards. So are there any declarations of interest? No. Right. Right, we now come to the minutes of the last meeting of the committee held on the 19th of May. I intend to do both corrections to the accuracy and any matters arising together. Can I note that those present at that meeting was Councillor Chowdhury, Councillor Gabriella Giles, Councillor Vikram Gariwal, Councillor Rajinder Sidhu and Councillor Karen Smith. So if any one of those would like to either do any or to move acceptance or make any corrections for accuracy, can any of you speak?
Chair, I'm happy to. It's Councillor Vikram Gurwal here from Hounslow Heath. I'm happy to move the minutes.
And I'm happy, Councillor Chowdhury, I'm happy to second.
Okay, thank you. Was there any corrections to any that anybody had? No. I know that sounds a bit backwards, but I was trying to get it in earlier.
No.
No.
Right. Can I now ask members to agree the minutes as now seen? Are you okay with that?
Yep.
Yes.
Good. Thank you.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you. I would usually now sign a physical copy of the minutes, but as this is currently impractical, we haven't worked out a way to do that. I shall ask the committee officer to ensure that I'm provided with a paper copy to sign either by post when it is possible to attend Hounslow House. In the meantime, the minutes will formally record that we agreed the minutes as a correct record of the last meeting. We now move on to the licensing report for the decision this evening. Where we need to time contributions, I will ask the legal officer to alert me to when allocated timings have been reached. I have spoken, I think, earlier to members. I've said that what we're going to do is combine questions and comments together this evening, and we will loosely be allowing 5 minutes for such. We won't be hard on that, but if anybody overruns that in any large way, then we will be coming down hard. So if you could try and stick to as close to 5 minutes as possible, then we'll all get on in a very friendly way. Can I also remind members and officers to introduce themselves when they speak and also mute their microphones and cameras when they've finished. It is also important to speak slowly and clearly so that everyone can understand what you are saying. Finally, if you're making reference to any agenda documentation, and there's a lot of that, please give the page and paragraph details. Right, so the agenda item that we're going to be considering tonight is item 3, which is CEX 486, result of the licensing policy consultation. I'm going now to call upon Vicky to introduce the report, and then the other officers to follow. So I'm handing over to you, Vicky.
Thank you.
So we all got our microphones switched off. Good.
Thank you, Chair. I would like to bring the report to you tonight, which gives you the results from the consultation into the draft licensing policy work which was recently carried out. We also bring forward the amended licensing policy for your agreement, and then look for your referral of the policy to Cabinet to note and to the Borough Council for approval. The presentation will be given by Andrew Devine, the licensing team manager, and Alistair Turnham of Make Associates, who conducted the research and analysed the results of the consultation. Thank you.
Andrew, right?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, good evening, everybody. I will be talking through the results of the consultation, both myself and Alistair from Make Consultants, who was involved in this process. Following on from our licensing committee meeting on the 19th of May, we went out for an 8-week public consultation. That consultation was undertaken between the 1st of June 2020 and the 27th of July. And from the consultation, the council wished to encourage as many people and organisations to the online survey as possible. To do this, and the work that we did to encourage that and to be inclusive as possible, was that all of the statutory responsible authorities were written to via email, as well as a number of other departments within the council. All neighbouring councils were also contacted, and this was in addition to other stakeholders as well in London, such as the GLA and the Night Tsar. As part of the consultation, all licensed premises and premises licence holders and schools were also written to and delivered to their registered addresses. So that was actually a physical letter that was sent out to them. The consultation was also advertised on the council's website through the duration of the consultation, with a link directly to the online survey through regular update emails and tweets sent out via our comms team. All known residents groups were contacted, and a quarter-page advert was also placed in the West London Gazette, including an online presence for 2 weeks. And details of the papers that was placed in can be found on page 156 of your report pack, as long as with other details of the consultation. So, in addition, the consultation was also featured in the council's community newsletter of Hounslow Matters, and in the internal council newsletter of Members Matters. Overall, I believe that the consultation that we undertook and the various ways that we put that consultation out and try to be as inclusive as possible has been effective, and that consultation strategy was effective, as we've received 122 responses to the online survey and 13 additional responses sent directly to council officers or councillors. So in total, we received 135 responses to our consultation. I'll give a brief overview now of those responses received during the consultation, but the full public consultation findings can be found in Appendix 5 on page 147 to 181 of the report. And just on the consultation findings that we have is that generally we've had an overwhelming majority, over 80% of respondents felt that the draft policy was clear, which is good. Some of the other majorities that I will go on to talk about between sort of the over 50s to 60% majorities, just a note at this point is that when I do mention these, it isn't that the other 49% or other 50% and lower are in a disagreement with the principle, but rather than the comments show that whilst they agree broadly with the policy, they feel that it could be stricter in some aspect. And I'll go on to talk about that in a little bit of time. So again, just an overview of these is that majority of the responses from the consultation, 60%, felt that the policy struck the right balance between protecting the community and allowing licenses to run their businesses. The majority, approximately 61 to 65% in each question about the 4 licensing objectives, felt that the draft licensing policy would help deliver these licensing objectives. And obviously the work around licensing revolves around these 4 licensing objectives, which are obviously the prevention of crime and disorder, the prevention of public nuisance, public safety, and the protection of children from harm. There was a majority, 53%, in favour of the core hours, which is one of the 3 key things that we were looking to introduce with this policy, though with a minority expressing that 8 AM was too early to commence the sale of alcohol. And we'll talk about that. I'll talk about that in a bit time. Now, there was a majority, 60%, in favour of maintaining the current CIP and extending it into Heston, and that was one of the other 3 the second of the 3 points that we were talking about. So that's been a favourable response to that. And finally, the model conditions, there was a majority, 56%, in favour, though there were a small number of additions and clarifications that we've made following the responses that we've received. So in total, with the 135 responses that we have received, that included over 360 comments that were left by respondents, and clear topics emerged from those. And these included the negative impact of off licenses and takeaways that the residents face in Heston, a small number of respondents wanting Cranford, North Hyde Lane and Osterley to be included in the CIP area, and Alistair will talk a little bit more about that when we come down to talk about the detail of the CIP section. There are a large number of comments surrounding negative experiences faced by residents due to licensing premises, and really these were categorised as follows into 4 points. One was the large volume of licenses in all parts of the borough, the proposed core hours for the sale of alcohol commencing too early at 8 AM, and overwhelming volumes of street drinking, fast food, litter, and how hard it was to find out when the new licence applications are made so residents can consider opposing them. So that is just a very brief overview committee of the responses that we'd received as part of the consultation. Now, following the completion of the consultation and the responses received, we've made some amendments to the policy which will be presented by both myself and Alistair, and this is where we will go into a bit more detail on this. And the revised draft licensing policy included as Appendix 1 of your report can be found on pages 14 to 43. And as discussed in the previous committee meeting, it sets out the council's approach to exercising its statutory responsibilities and functions under the Licensing Act. The policy must be renewed every 5 years, and the current policy ends in November 2020. The draft licensing policy strengthens the link between the licensing and other council policies. It provides additional information for applicants, residents and members about how the Licensing Act will be dealt with in Hounslow. And also, in particular, there have been a focus on creating a clearer, simpler policy. And that was included in the draft policy that went to committee on the 19th of May and is referenced in LP1 to LP11 included. So, as you will be aware from May's committee, there were 3 key proposed changes, and these are summarised on page 6 of the report. and they were the review of the existing cumulative impact area, the proposed clearer core hours, and finally the introduction of a suite of model conditions. So I will talk very briefly just about the significant change number one. The significant change number one being the cumulative impact is where I'll pass actually over to Alistair. And Alistair from our licensing and research consultants who will discuss the cumulative impact assessment amendments, which are on pages 44 to 127, so quite a large part of the report, with regard, and the cumulative impact map, which can be found on page 128. So at this point, I would like to introduce Ali Turnham to talk to you about the cumulative impact assessment and the outcomes and any amendments that have been made.
Okay, thank you, Andrew. Thank you, councillors. Thank you, Chair. Okay, so I'm going to very briefly talk to you a little bit about the cumulative impact assessment and what we changed with that, and then a little bit about the cumulative impact policy area map and some of the issues around that and recommendations to committee about the results of the consultation. So post-consultation, there have only been minor changes made to the cumulative impact assessment. One of these is particularly important though, and that's the addition of a final section, and that starts on page 122, which is on the impact of alcohol on the borough, its services and the community from the Director of Public Health. Public Health couldn't provide that information for the draft cumulative impact assessment, and I remember Councillor Giles, you mentioned would that be forthcoming, and it was. Obviously the Public Health at the council was very much focused on COVID emergency planning and coping, and they were able to provide that afterwards. So we've included that at page 122 in the cumulative impact assessment, and it's important because Hounslow has a large number of indicators for alcohol-related harm that are above the London and UK averages, and it puts in context how important it is that licence applications for alcohol are carefully scrutinised by the council's licensing panels for any potential negative impact when applications are received. So that's the main change to the cumulative impact assessment. There were minor changes from members of the public feedback and from some of the councillors, and we made those changes as well. Okay, so moving on to the cumulative impact policy area map. There were representations from 3 areas wishing also to be included in this revised CIP area. As members of the public may also be aware, there was a proposal to extend it into Heston, which the committee agreed at the last meeting to consult upon. And as Andrew has said, that was broadly very much supported. However, these 3 additional areas I'm now going to talk briefly about, and none of those areas at this point in time do we recommend that the council includes in further extending its cumulative impact policy, and I'll give reasons why that is. Okay, so the first of these was from Heston Action Group, who had campaigned for a number of years to get Heston itself included. And Heston have done a lot of good work, which should be acknowledged in terms of producing evidence about some of the issues that they face in that area. Heston Action Group and 39 residents signed a letter to the consultation to include parts of North Hyde Lane and Convent Way in the cumulative impact policy area to extend it slightly further. And there's no doubt from the photographic evidence and the comments we've received from them that there are problems there related to street drinking and the sale of off-licensed alcohol in particular. The reason that we do not recommend extending at this time the Heston cumulative impact policy boundary further into that area is because the Licensing Act 2003 is very clear that cumulative impact means, and this bit is really important, so I'm going to quote directly for councillors and members of the public. It says directly that the potential impact on the promotion of the licensing objectives of a significant number of licensed premises concentrated in one area. At the moment, there are only 2 off licenses in that part of North Hyde Lane and 1 just off Convent Way. If the council were to extend its cumulative impact policy area further to the north of Heston than is already recommended and refuse a licence if someone was to apply, it is almost certain that a disgruntled applicant and their barrister or QC would appeal and argue that there is no significant number of premises concentrated in that area. So, for example, in the new Heston area to the south of the M4, the cumulative impact area, there are actually 14 off licences, and there are over 40 in the original Hounslow cumulative impact area. It's thus my view that in the Magistrates Court, such an applicant who disgruntled at being refused an application would have a good case, and the council would likely lose and potentially face costs being awarded against him. This may also undermine the whole cumulative impact policy more generally. However, it's important to note that this does not mean that the experience of locals of the negative effects of street drinking are not important. This does need addressing in my view. I therefore suggested to officers, and I suggest to you councillors, that you develop a two-pronged approach. The first is to gather more detailed evidence, say 6 months, on the problems in this area in concert with locals and Heston Action Group, and then secondly step up monitoring and compliance checking of the few premises located in these areas. For example, there may already be breaches of licence conditions taking place, and that could lead to remedial action which may solve some of the problems that they're experiencing up there. It also does not mean that the committee has to automatically grant an application for a new off licence in that area of North Hyde Lane and Convent Way, providing the council, police or residents object to it. It's perfectly reasonable to expect that an applicant comes to you committee having put in place procedures and protocols to avoid adding to problems that are being experienced in that area. And they must also be within core hours unless they can justify being outside of it. A licensing panel can still refuse an application if it is not satisfied that it will promote the licensing objectives, even if it's not in a cumulative impact area. The second area, that a small number of residents wanted to be included in the cumulative impact area, was Osterley. There are obviously issues here as well with street drinking, but the same problem arises is that there is only one frequently cited off licence that is problematic in the public feedback. Again, the advice here for Osterley is that this premises requires further compliance scrutiny, monitoring and enforcement from the council. The final area was Cranford, and that's slightly different. Having examined all the data the council has, it doesn't particularly stand out as any worse than any other area such as Hanworth, Brentford or Chiswick. However, in the consultation, there was clear support from a small number of residents and some councillors for its inclusion. And they gave multiple examples of why street drinking and to a lesser extent takeaways were negatively impacting their quality of life. The reason that Cranford is slightly different to North Heston and Osterley is that there is a small cluster of premises in one area where the A4 meets Berkeley Avenue. Councillors there and members of the public will know that area. Here there are 6 premises clustered that are licensed to sell alcohol as well as some late night takeaways. Is this, as the law says, significant? Possibly. The law sets no threshold when the number of premises in an area becomes significant or for the size of area that they must be concentrated into. However, because this has only emerged as an issue during the consultation, the evidence for Cranford at the moment is weaker, and the council would need evidence from multiple sources, not just consultation responses, if it were to apply a cumulative impact area to Cranford. So again, my advice has been to take a two-pronged approach and to engage with locals and all council departments and partners such as the police and Hounslow Highways to collect further specific evidence, say within the next year, of problems that are arising there. In the context of all of those areas, it's important to remember that cumulative impact policy is not an absolute bar to new venues open, and that it should not be seen as a silver bullet. It is one tool in the box, and this toolbox also includes monitoring, compliance and enforcement. So overall, it's my advice that over the next year, the council, if you agree, councillors, follow this two-pronged approach and decide an exact strategy and the required resources with your officers to build a better evidence base in those areas and to up the ante in terms of monitoring and compliance. Finally, you'll be glad to know from me, it's worth remembering that you have to review your cumulative impact assessment every 3 years at the latest, and modify any cumulative impact area if evidence suggests that the boundaries or the type of problems have changed. You do not have to wait 5 years as you do for the policy, although then you could review your policy earlier, although you would probably not want to given the extensive nature of the consultation required. So the policy has been designed so that when it comes to reviewing the cumulative impact area and potential new cumulative impact areas, you do not have to consult on the whole policy again, but just the cumulative impact assessment and any proposed changes to the maps or areas. So these 3 years gives you time to produce an area specific evidence base, particularly in the case of Cranford, where you may have a significant number of premises that are causing problems, and to consider any changes in concert with the community and partners. Okay, so that's my summary of my advice to the committee and officers on what should or shouldn't be considered further within the cumulative impact area. On that note, I will hand back to Andrew. Thank you.
Thank you, Ali, for going through that.
I'll just interrupt there and say, Ali, I'm glad to see you look a lot better than you did the last time we met. I think you were in the throes of COVID-19 at that time, or were worried about that.
Yeah, I did have it then, Chair, but thank you very much. I'm feeling a lot better. I did have it then, Chair, thank you. I'm feeling a lot better, thank you.
Good. Right, sorry, Andrew.
That's no problem, Chair, no problem at all. So I'd like to go on to talk about actually the second point of our significant changes, which was the introduction of the core hours, which can be seen on page 29 of the document. I'll just get to page 29, and that's part of the draft licensing report now that we have. So on page 29, sorry, it does start actually on page 28, sorry, the core licensing hours, and goes on to be included within LP3 of the core hours. So the proposed hours as part of the original draft licensing policy on the 19th of May that came before the committee had a start time of 8 AM, and that was on Monday to Saturday, with Sunday starting at 10 AM. Following the consultation and feedback, this has now been amended so that the start time Monday to Saturday has been put back 1 hour to 9 AM. And obviously with the committee's approval, that is what would go forward. So the council supports the principle of flexibility in its approach to licensing hours, and we consider the merits of each individual application. The council is mindful that the borough is one of the most densely populated in the country, with large numbers of residential premises, often close to areas of commercial activity, as well as mixed use neighbourhoods. So the council, what we're looking to do and what we have included within the policy as well is to take an approach to the licensing hours that seeks balance to the needs of the licensing trade whilst protecting residential amenity in order to promote the licensing objectives. It should be noted that the policy does not apply to those who are making an application within the cumulative impact area, which Alistair's talked about previously. And if an applicant wishes to seek a license outside of the core hours, what we have made very clear in the policy, in the wording of the draft policy, is that they will need to provide the evidence as to how their application will not harm the licensing objectives. So just to reiterate is that obviously the change with the core hours is that Monday to Saturday it was originally proposed at 8 AM, and that we've based on the feedback that we have received from the consultation, that we have looked to move that to 9 AM as a start, but also try to seek a balance between the licensing, the license trade and protecting residential amenity. At this point, it's a very short point on that, but I'm going to hand back to Ali to then talk about the introduction of our model conditions.
As a member of the public, you'll be pleased to know this is a lot shorter but just as dry, I'm afraid, as the previous lot. But as Andrew noted, the majority of respondents, including the police, supported the model conditions. So only a small number of minor amendments have been made, including the addition of 2 conditions where respondents felt that important issues were not served by the other conditions. These are on a page 140 of your paper bundle or virtual bundle, and they're conditions 96 and 97. And they're simply some conditions that you as a panel might suggest, or applicants themselves might use about the availability of low and non-alcoholic beverages as part of the mix. And then another slightly more pertinent condition, considering some of the problems around takeaway litter and street drinking, which is a condition around external bins and the emptying those bins. Please remember that all of these conditions are model conditions. They're a basket of conditions for applicants and licensing panels to pick from and to put alongside perhaps their own suggested conditions. And they may wish to even change the wording of some of these in concert with you as a licensing committee when you're members of a panel. That's fine. These are not mandatory conditions. There are mandatory conditions which are legally required of every licensed venue, and they will be put on the council's website alongside the new policy as well. But these are model conditions, so they're conditions to pick from when preparing a licence application. And finally, following feedback from the council's leadership team meeting, when they reviewed this ahead of today's meeting, they were keen that the introduction and context of the model conditions were made more prominent within the licensing policy and explained more clearly. And so we've sought to do that as well in some of the changes we've made. Thanks, Andrew.
Thanks, Alistair. Finally, I'd just like to go over some other amendments to the policy, as well as any typos or corrections that needed to be made throughout the document, which we've done as well. We've also introduced a page which can be found on page 26 of the report. During the following COVID or during COVID, there was a Business and Planning Act came into force, the Business and Planning Act 2020. So we've given a brief overview of this and what it means for our licensed premises, and what additional functionality and availability that the Business and Planning Act brings. We've also updated the language based on comments from Planning, Children and Adult Services and Environment. An example of this can be seen on page 21 of your report under the Protection of Children section, where the wording has been amended not just to prevent the underage sales, but also to cover how children will be involved in crime and disorder, drugs and drug taking, etc., whilst on the premises, and to update that language and get that from the consultees that we've spoken to as part of this or have responded as part of this. In addition, and just really to reiterate what Alistair said earlier, actually, they are the licensing police sergeant and the local policing lead both have an overwhelming positive feedback for the policy, which is encouraging, obviously, as they are, I would say, our crime leads within the borough. So, and having their feedback and and the positive feedback from them has been encouraging with this. And on that, just part of a double act, but to hand back to Alistair, just to finally talk you through the Equalities Impact Assessment, which will be found as appendix, my apologies, I think it's appendix 6 of the report.
What page was that, Alan? Sorry.
It's the one thing. It is page 182.
Page 182, Chair.
Okay, got it.
Even more briefly than last time. I'm just going to say there's very little to say that we didn't cover in the May committee about equalities. Obviously, the whole process of developing the licence policy has been through a very thorough equalities impact assessment. But one of the things that we have added to the policy is that we've put a request here that applicants are mindful and are compliant with the Equalities Act 2010 when presenting you, the committee members, when you're on licensing panels with their application. It's worth reminding us all here that the licensing policy can't replicate any other legislation or shouldn't do the job of any other legislation, and that's quite specific in the Licensing Act. So other than asking applicants to refer to the Equalities Act and ensure that they're Equalities Act compliant, to commit decisions to consider that the application does not contravene the Equalities Act, that's kind of as much as we can do realistically here. In a way that applicants run their business, they should already be following the Equalities Act, as you as a council yourselves should be following the Act. Okay, thanks very much, Andrew.
Thank you, Alistair. And you might be pleased to know we come to the end essentially. So I'd like to thank you all for your time, and obviously just to reiterate, as Vicky said at the start there, for the Licensing Committee's approval for the 4 points that she discussed at the beginning of the report. And we'd obviously be happy to take any questions the committee may have.
Right, thank you, gentlemen. Right, I'm going to move on now to members, and as I said earlier on, what I will invite members to do is to first of all ask any questions and then make any comments that they have, and then we'll go through each person to do that, each member, and then we'll wrap it up at the end with an all-encompassing question if anybody else wants to come back in against it. So what I'm going to do now is so you'll be asking questions of the officers, by the way. So I think that's but making comments about the document. So I'm now going to move initially to Councillor Coleman Chowdhury. Do you have any questions or comments to make, Coleman?
Hi, it's Coleman Chowdhury speaking. I just wanted to say thank you for the report. It was really detailed, and a few of the questions I did have been kind of clarified through that. I just wanted to check with the timings. So the proposal was, so this is for the core hours. The proposal was for it to be 8 AM, but then following feedback, it was it's now being recommended for a 9 AM start. So just to check, is it currently 8 AM?
No, I think it'd be fair to say that there are no core hours at the moment because this is an introduction. So the original recommendations were 8 AM, I think, but following this we're going to 9. But there is no core hours in situ at this particular point in time. That will come in after the council meeting in November.
Okay, so just part of one of the 3 new things that we're looking to add as part of this policy. Okay, that's it. That's all I wanted to ask. Thank you.
Okay, Carol. Yeah, right. Okay, answer.
Hello. Yes. I'd just say thank you for the consideration of Osterley. I know I raised it in the meeting that we had last time. You said to keep a record. What would you recommend we keep a record of to showcase why it should be included?
Okay, thanks, Councillor Chowdhury. Right, so I think, we can advise this through officers and work up a more detailed plan. But I think we will need more photographic evidence of some of the problems that you've got up there with dates and times. And that can be done by yourself as councillors, members of the community, local action group. So that's one of the things. I also think that we should be looking at working with both the police and Hounslow Highways and calls out to calls into pollution control. So we develop a much more comprehensive, very small area database of detailed facts and figures about Osterley. Because at the moment, one of the challenges that you have, not just in Hounslow, but across London, is the granularity and fine detail of data that is collected. And it's very hard to do that at that level for the whole of a borough, just in terms of the huge amounts of resources it would take. When you're able to identify a problem through public feedback, such as this process, you can then perhaps apply more resources to that smaller area to develop a much clearer and more detailed picture of what the problems are that are happening there. So I would suggest those sorts of data, and we can work with officers to start collecting that in more detail with you and the community there over the following months. That would be my recommendation.
Can I also say, and so that it's important to recognise that there is also enforcement that comes into play on this. And when we're talking about cumulative impact policy, cumulative impact is about the future, about how we structure the industry in the future. It's forward, but we can change things by policing the current operators and seeing and dealing with situations, especially breaches of licensing rules. It's important that members of the public and councillors, where they can feed that information back to our enforcement officer, because we've only got one and he can't be outside every premise all of the time. So it's quite important that we have data coming in that we can then follow up with, and if people are in breach of their licensing conditions, then we can look at calling their license in. In saying that, it's also possible for members of the public to ask for a license to be called in, as long as the reasons are not frivolous, that they are backed by good evidence. So that's really where we need to be. It's not just a single approach with one officer. It's about how we as a community look at trying to ensure that what we have is a licensing program out there that is fit for purpose for all members of the public. Right, sorry about that, but yeah, are you okay with that? And sorry, have you got any more follow-up?
No, yeah, that's fine, thank you.
Okay, I'm going to move now on to Banda. Are you there, Banda? I can only see. I can't see her on here. There's only one telephone connection, I think, at the moment. Is that right, Sadiq?
Hi.
There are two people in. I believe Councillor.
Hi. Yes. Hi.
Is on mute.
Right. Okay, Banda. Is that Banda?
Sorry.
Is that Banda?
It is. Sorry. Can you hear me?
Yes. Yes. Anyway, if you can introduce yourself, because nobody can see you. So if you introduce yourself and then go ahead and ask your questions, etc.
I thought I'd already introduced myself before.
Sorry, we didn't catch it.
Sorry? Yeah.
Chair, because Councillor Chopra has dialed in, we just need to allow for a little bit of a delay.
Okay.
Sorry, Chair. Councillor Chopra has just dropped out of the call. I'm trying to get her to connect back in.
Okay, right. In the meantime, then, if we move on to Councillor Eason, and then when Councillor Chopra comes back in, and after Councillor Eason has finished, then we can bring her back into the sequence. Okay, Richard.
Yeah, Councillor Richard Eason, Ostley Springgrove Ward. Thanking officers for the report, very thorough, and I concur with the recommendation that we should be doing more research on the Ostley area. I suspect that some of the liquor that is contributing to issues is actually purchased outside of the Ostley area. And then consumed and litter dropped in the area. So I think that's going to be one of the lines of inquiry that we should be following. It's the issues are not necessarily associated with the small number of premises which are in the Osterley area. So I think that there's definitely more research warranted. But again, overall, I'm impressed by the report, and I'm certainly supportive of the 9 a.m. core hours. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. Right, is Councillor Chopra back in again yet, Sadiq?
No, not yet, Chair. Not
Okay.
yet.
Right, I'll move on to Councillor Georgie. Adriana?
Hi, good evening, everyone. Thank you, Chair, for presenting today. I really appreciate it. And thank you to the officer for putting up a lovely report. Yeah, it was not a question. It was just more to add. I know the licensing authority needs to be satisfied in order to that is appropriate to impose conditions. But it was making the same point like my colleague about the street drinking and nuisance. That's all. Thank you. Yeah, it was not a question. It was just more to add. I know the licensing authority needs to be satisfied in order to
managed to drop off. I don't know how. I'm from there.
Can you still hear me? Can you still hear me?
Yeah, loud and clear. I'm trying to switch to Councillor Foote.
Hello? The image got blocked. I don't know why. Is it my connection?
No, Councillor George, we can hear you. We're just trying to connect to the chair.
Shall I repeat again, or you have heard what I've said?
Sorry, this is Baljeet Verdi here. It looks like Councillor
dropped out. Yeah.
Yep. So just confirming that. So looks like he's coming back on.
Right.
Connection is not very clear.
Right. I think I was logged out for a little while. Did you actually say anything at all, Adriana? You were just introducing yourself when
Yeah,
my
I was introducing myself, and I had more a suggestion. Has everyone heard me?
I think for ease, could we get your segment again, please, Councillor George?
Can you hear me now? Yeah.
Yeah, if you could just see what you said, so for my benefit.
I've introduced myself. I'm Adriana George, a Labour Party councillor for Bedford, and I wanted to thank you, Richard, for presenting today, and to the all officers for putting up a lovely report. And I had more like a suggestion. I say that I know the licensing authority it needs to be satisfied in order for the conditions to be imposed, and I wanted to add up about street drinking and the nuisance in the area. So that was one of the things, and the litter.
Which area is that, Adriana?
I'll say Bedford because it's my word.
No, you froze. You froze.
Probably my connection is not that great.
No,
Can everyone hear me?
I think we're all suffering from the weather.
I can hear you, Adriana. So I don't know if it's intermittent depending on everyone's Wi-Fi connection.
Thank you, Amsa.
Right.
Sorry,
Okay, Chair.
it appears that the chair's
email me
dropping
back.
out
I
again.
can email this back to the chair and or to the officers if you can hear me. That's not a problem.
So, Chair, Councillor George's comments came through to everybody. I think it may be your reception may have dropped out at that point. Is there anything that you would like her to clarify?
Yeah, I just really, if you could just give me a précis of the areas you covered, Adriana.
I'll say for now Bedford because that's what's more concerning me. And then probably the most around Hounslow because I've been reporting loads of issues about drinking on the streets and littering around.
So
and that happens around the premises.
Yeah. Okay. So street drinking and litter. Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Adriana.
Thank you, Richard.
Right.
And everyone.
Now, I'm showing lots of people, but not really linked. Okay, so who's next? That was Gabrielle. Is Banner back online yet? Anyone?
Councillor Chopper is back. Councillor Chopper, if you can hear me, could you dial *6 on your phone, please? Thank you.
Hello there.
Hi,
Can you hear
Banner.
me?
Yep.
Hi. Keep cutting out. Okay. So can you hear me now?
Yes.
I have been listening, and I agree with a lot of the comments that have been made. I don't want to be making a long speech because I keep getting cut out. I don't know if you can hear me very well.
Do you have any points to make, Banner?
Sorry?
Do you have any specific points to make?
Not at the moment. What I'm going to do is, I'm going to put them on chat because I've got chat open as well, and I can see people are putting things on the chat.
All right. Okay. All right then. I'll move on then for the time being, then, Banner. Okay.
Thank you. I'll just put them on chat when I have comments to make, and you can pick them up from there.
Okay. Right, I'm going to move to Councillor Giles.
Thank you, Councillor Foote. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can, loud and clear.
Fantastic. Great. So first of all, I would like to thank you for the work. Sorry, Sadiq, there's a bunch of background noise coming from somewhere.
Yeah, can somebody can you all turn off your microphones if you're not on, please?
So, okay,
Right.
so I'll continue if that's okay. So thank you very much for the work. I appreciate that I can see through it that you've incorporated lots of the comments that I made when we discussed the draft policy. And I really welcome the fact that this is now a bit more user-friendly and ready for the 21st century. I can see that also you've done a lot of work with consultation and appreciate the work that's gone in. So for me, I just have a couple of questions about kind of the response rate for the consultation. I know that you've said that that you thought that the results and the kind of the response rate was fantastic, but is it, would you say it's indicative that only 0.5 percentage point of those who have licenses actually replied to this consultation? Obviously they've got their licenses, they're fine, so it's more to do with new license applications, but is that an indication of this report and this policy being suitable for those who actually use it?
Okay, who have I got? Have I got?
So that could be either Alistair or Ali.
Yeah.
Okay. Or Andrew, sorry.
Yeah, so I can.
Yep, go on.
Yeah, no, definitely. So what I can say to that, Councillor Giles, is obviously as the response as well hasn't just been from residents because of the consultation where we've actually written to the premises licence holders and the personal licence holders who may be DPSs at the premises. We have had a range of responses from various different groups. So we've had them from residential, we've had them from the licensed premises, we've had them from personal licence holders. I think in addition to that, something that is good is obviously, or you know, as an outer London borough where we're not in an inner London borough like your Westminsters, Camdens, maybe Hackneys, that would have a, you know, they would have significant nighttime economy and night issues and other licensing issues in that respect that may generate more responses. I think for an outer London borough, we've had a good level of response with the 135 comments we've had a good level of response across the board from various different people, and that's why that's why I feel that the consultation was highly successful. I think also in the people that have responded, we've also had a good age range and a good diversity of people that have responded. In addition to that, we've had a good range across the borough. So not just because we didn't ask for any sort of personal details in that way, but we did ask from where in the borough they were responding. And I feel that we've got a good coverage across the borough, east to west, and that added with the volume of responses that we've had, I feel are good. And I don't know if Ali wants to come in at this point just to add anything, but I think those sort of factors and those results that we've seen from the consultation make me feel that that consultation has been significant and been highly effective. So Ali, sorry, I didn't want to put you on the spot, but I don't know if you've got anything else to add to that as well.
Yeah, just thanks, Councillor. Yeah, we've got things like licensing consultations, unless you're in the Westminster or the Camden, as Andrew says, where it tends to be more controversial. Much bigger amounts of money being invested and therefore contentious, and the turnover of businesses tends to be much higher. My experience of consultations in particularly neighbouring areas such as Richmond and Hammersmith and Fulham and Ealing, where I've done the similar work, this is definitely a good response. So we had 5% from premises licence holders and 17% from personal. So, and this is on page 159. So I think 22%, almost a fifth of the respondents being from the trade, is pretty good. And I think that's testament to the fact that Andrew and the team there wrote to all 850 premises licensed and almost 5,000 personal license holders. And just reflecting on your comments earlier, we have tried to make it a bit more user friendly, a little bit with the hyperlinks and trying to put in more reference, getting rid of acronyms and things. Actually, you made some really great points about that. I think it's worth noting just briefly, I've made a list of the number of pages in other people's policies, because I was thinking this is quite a short policy. I know it does around 25 pages excluding the covers and stuff. So Westminster's current policy is 150 pages excluding appendices. Lambeth have got theirs down to 40 from about 100 in the last one. Hackney's about 28, and we used Hackney's as quite an influence. Camden's almost 90 and Southwark's 80. So the fact we've been able to reduce it a little bit further and tighten it up with your input has actually been quite helpful, I think. So thank you very much for that. But overall, I think it's to at least get a fifth of people being from the trade is reasonable. We often just get large numbers of residents.
It's quite nice to know that there's, sorry to interrupt, Ali, and I'm really glad to see you're back up and running and everything. But I was just wondering, it's obviously 5% of the respondents. It's not 5% of the license holders. So I think, it's
just give them my wife. Oh, no.
To make. So to that point, I was just going to ask if the letters that went out, were they addressed to the name of the license holder, for example, or did it go to the license holder much in the same way that we get stuff that's to the occupier of a premises?
So I'll come in on that point. So I can say that what we did was we actually wrote to every premises at the premises with the named licensed premises holder, and if that was different, what we also did was wrote to them at their address, the premises license holder's address. So so if it was different, so in some cases the premises license holder may live at the premises or above the premises in that instance. If it wasn't, we did the both, and what we did was we worked actually with the mail team to ensure that we weren't sending out multiple copies of the same letter to the same people at the same addresses. So we did a rationale there and also saving some costs on postage. So we did a rationale on that to remove any duplicates across that board.
So I think my question to that point is that it's not for lack of trying on your part. It's exactly.
No. Well, I'd like to think no in that we, you know, because obviously at the time we were in, you know, there were a lot of restrictions in place because of COVID. We wanted to ensure that we got it out there as much as possible, and through that, and with the help of our comms team and other members within the council and obviously yourselves as councillors, to get that word out there. So we tried on multiple different platforms and different ways to be able to do it, and obviously in all those platforms as well, we gave the licensing email address and phone number for anybody that needed to get contact with us.
And talking of other methods, because you've on page 156.47, you said that it was also promoted via a variety of different social and online resources.
Yes.
And I noticed that there was paged adverts in some of the local press, but I noticed there were things like the Chronicle, the Chiswick, is it the Chiswick Chronicle wasn't included on that list either. But also I was just thinking that, and this is probably my main point, is that how about those local websites like Brentford TW8 or Chiswick W4 and those kind of forums as well, which are, or even Nextdoor, which we've seen has got now huge amounts of kind of interaction and engagement on.
Yeah, I mean, and with regards to how the consultation went out there, and obviously with what we did working with our comms team and putting that out there, that was a case of working with our comms team in that to get that out there. And I know they did the package was both in the physical newspaper and also on the banners in that respect. But fully take your point on board and definitely look at that for you know, if we need to in the future.
Yeah, because I think it just helps me get into this point of also I don't think I noticed anything about the publication of license notices, and that I know that typically this has all been done via the traditional press, but wondered if there was going to be any move, probably not within this policy document, but future ones, about how we can better publicise the notices of licence.
Okay, yes, absolutely. So just on that point, obviously at the moment we do, you know, there is a notice that goes up at the premises. There is it goes up in the web, and there's a requirement for that to happen. Sorry, up on our website as well, and obviously there's a requirement to place it in the newspaper. I think one of the key things there is obviously it's very we are guided by the section 182 guidance of how it needs to be placed and what constitutes. So we also, and I think going back to a point earlier that we made there previously, where one of the negative comments was that maybe people and residents groups and residents of the borough would like to see a way that they could be notified a bit easier. Now with the software that we have at the moment, we don't have that capabilities, but we are actually in the process, or Hounslow Council is in the process of procuring an upgrade to our software, and as part of that we are looking at a redesign of the service. I don't mean that in we're looking to restructure anything, but it's just how can we better serve our residents, and how can we better put things out there for them. So if this is something that we can build into that redesign, and I really hope it is, because the more open we can be, the more inclusive we can be with our residents, the better it is, and the better the service that we're going to give, and the more inclusive the residents will feel. And that you know, ultimately with new ways of technology, it moves online, and it's automated, and you know, we will have people's email addresses, and you know, it's a bit more modern, shall we say, than having to write to everybody. But we're investigating other avenues for getting that message out there, and using other sort of community newsletters. But we will look into that. But like I say, I think our drive and our focus as well is to see what we can do through this new upgrade, through the redesign, and through getting, you know, making it easier for residents to interact with the licensing team.
That's great to hear. And then one final thing that's just arisen as part of our conversation now, sorry Richard, I won't be long, is the data that we got from public health regarding you know, priorities and context. There's some really interesting figures in there which I would love to request if we could get this on an annualised basis, so that we can keep a better track of kind of how this is, like some of these things, the kind of the admission to hospital for alcohol related. This will all be very useful that we as licence committee members could benefit from. I think if we had a bit more of a kind of historical view of how things are changing within the borough, because I think that will potentially help us make decisions later on.
I think Gabriella, I also have seen, especially the stuff from public health, because that's not been evident previously and it's only really coming out now. I think that certainly, I mean, I was a bit concerned about hospital figures, but then when you take into account that the main hospital in Hounslow is West Middlesex Hospital, but is very close to the borders with Whitton and Twickenham.
Yeah.
And a lot of their customers will come from Whitton and Twickenham. So that could explain why numbers are heavier in Hounslow than they are, say, in Ealing or in Richmond even.
Yeah,
so I think that there are evidence there. So I think that what we need to do is, and it's something that I think we should be talking to, certainly public health and perhaps the others that are supplying figures as well, is to try and identify where the data's coming from, or where the people that are involved are coming from, not by their address and that sort of thing, but certainly by postcode, which I think would give us some idea about probably where the problem areas are within our own borough, as well as what is happening about data that's coming in from people who are coming from out of the borough. So I think that, you know, we need better data from there, and I understand that and appreciate that, and it's certainly something I'd already scribbled down in my notes to that effect. But you know, we need to be able to identify. We need to, you know, when we talk about people and seriously suffering from drinking problems and in hospital because of that, we need to know where they're coming from. If we've got people coming in there with injuries that have stemmed from either from you know, being with an abusive person who's drunk or whatever, then we need to get an idea of sort of what area that is as well, so we can try and home in a bit more. At the moment we can only home in on that it's the borough, and even that is questionable because of the...
Oh, we lost Richard again.
Yeah, the chair's gone, unfortunately.
So just to that point, I just think it's really valuable data that I think would help us in the long run. So that's just my request, which I think Richard is already in agreement with. So that's it from me today.
I mean, I don't know if I can just come in on that as well, Councillor Giles. I think that is a really good point, and it's something that, you know, we can hope to develop a better data partnership with our public health team, and then obviously provide more detail into committee on that, and obviously not just public health but other partnerships maybe within the local authority as well, other teams and departments that work with us. So yes, that's definitely, you know, it's good to see the chair on board with that, and obviously it's a really good point that you've made, and hopefully we intend to build on that in the future.
Yeah, no, I think that's great.
Sorry, this is Baldi Verde, legal. It looks like Councillor Foote has now, before he was frozen, but it looks like he's now sort of dropped out of the meeting, so it might be worth just waiting for him to log back in.
Okay, that's fine.
If that is the case, can I ask all members to mute their microphones and turn their cameras off until the chair gets back? Thank you. Hello, Councillor. Can you hear us? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can hear you. Yeah, I think I got cut off there. I've had to come out and then.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
come
no
back
worries. What we have done was we did ask everyone to stop and wait until you did reconnect. So
Yeah.
I believe we can go back to the last point Councillor Giles was talking about.
It's because of the heavy rain. It's affecting my Wi-Fi because it's on a satellite dish. That's the unfortunate bit about being.
Well, do you want an interesting irrelevant fact that Wi-Fi has the same frequency as water, so that's why. Anyway, so that's why it affects. So my point was, Richard, very much in agreement with you, and as Councillor Richard Easton has put in the chat, this data is available for, or we get data from Public Health for other committees. So I think it just reinforces the fact that I think it would be quite useful. So I think that was it from me, Richard.
Yeah, I think that was I was making the same point, but I don't know whether I was being heard at the time. But we need to follow up on that data and to make sure that we can make best use of it. Yep.
Yep, that's it from me. Thank you.
Okay, then I'll move on to Vikram.
Thank you, Chair. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Excellent.
You're very much silhouetted.
Oh, sorry. It's good to have you back as well. As always, when you're slightly laced down the list, your other colleagues tend to ask all your questions. So that's happened with my instance. But on more of a number one, thank you for the offline consultations and conversations that we've had. Ali in particular, we had a couple of conversations offline about Hounslow Heath and some areas within my own ward. But in Hounslow Heath, also across all the other wards that I'm familiar with in the borough, I must say it's a very comprehensive report, and the areas covered are what I agree with. So I don't really have any questions, but just for it to be minted that I support it, and also it's a very well put together report.
Okay, thank you very much, Vikram. So I'll go on to Vishnu. Right, Bish.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Can you hear me?
Yep, you're live.
Yeah, okay. Thanks, Chair. I'm Councillor Vishnu Gurung. I'm from Mahanat Park ward. First, I would like to thank you to council officer who has done really hard work and coming out with the 200 pages of the policies, which is very hard working and spend a lot of time. So I would like to say thank you very much for all of the officer who has done this tremendous work for the licensing committee. I do have a few questions to ask for you, but I think the policy is for 5 years, from 2020 to 2025. Yeah. So in that case, that I would like to ask you a question or clarification that about the core hour. Is that the core hour is only for the premises license holder, or they are also the license holder, which is you have categorized on the page number 106? Yeah, because there are 10 temporary event license, street license, that sort of thing. So does this time or core hour also applicable for them, or they've got a different timetable?
126, did you say, Vishnu?
106.
106. I was going to say, I'm looking at adults with a school of dependency.
No, there's a 100 page, 106 is a category.
So what? I'm not sure what you were asking. in relation to that. Whether that's the core hours.
Yeah, it's a core hours that we are planning to open from 9 p.m. to and finish on Saturday is 12 midnight.
That's the core hours that we'd expect, especially in residential areas.
So that
means that, yeah.
So that means then the category of that pays then does not apply this core hour.
I can't see it on page 106. This is about pollution and noise and odours. Is that where you're talking about?
It's not a pollution. Yeah, it's a pollution, and you go down to the category on the paragraph 43.
Yeah.
So, have you got it?
Yeah, that's about.
Yeah, that's about the is pollution. So that's why I'm asking that is the core hour is applicable for them as well.
I don't understand what you mean by pollution.
No, it's not a pollution. On the pollution headline, on the page number 106, there is a category you have written. That's the 10 license, temporary even license, consultation, music, commercial, license, consultation, all sort of categories under there.
Yeah. Well, the license and the core hours will relate to all licensing activities.
Okay, that's all I want the clarification.
Yeah. Now, TENS is different. Now, the TENS is a different license, and it's something that I can talk at length about, but won't, because I bore everybody, because I really am. I'm not happy about TENS in the way in which it's operated, but we don't have a say in it. It's quite strictly governed by the legislation. I think I'm right in that on that issue. But I don't think there's much we can do about TENS. That's not linked to core hours.
Okay, thank you very much. Anyway, that's a good clarification, because we need the clarification as well on that. And I also concerned about this is for the 5-year policy, and I haven't seen the fee and the charges for 5 years. So how are we going to operate or place the fees and charges for 5 years? Are we going to stick with the one charges, or we're going to be increased every year?
Hi.
Yeah, go on then.
Councillor, I can step in at that this. So just to let you know, so just to I think go back over some of your points there, Councillor Gurung. The times that we propose in the core hours are to any new licensed premises, obviously, that open up following the implementation of this new policy, of the draft policy that we're proposing here at the moment. It won't apply to TENS, the temporary event notices. They are not licenses. They are exactly what they say in a temporary event notice, but we can, during that application that we receive for a 10, we can have receive representations that mean that they can be refused potentially. Now, just with regards to fees, the fees are set statutorily, so the local authority doesn't set the fees with regards to the Licensing Act. So they are set fees and would not be changing unless they are changed as part of any revision to statutory fees.
Okay, thank you. And I've got one more question regarding the CIP, the community impact. I've seen you have done lots of the research and consultation, but haven't seen anything else on the Feltham High Street, Feltham Park, that area. I don't know whether you have carried out or you are not including in this area yet. So can you tell us a bit more about this? What have you done for the Feltham High Street? We are suffering very much as well in the Feltham High Street about the bench drinking and making pollution there.
Can we let Alistair come in on that? I think he did. I think he did cover it in his earlier comments, but I don't know. Alistair, you're going to comment on that? Yeah, you're live, Alistair.
Hi, yeah, thanks, Councillor Foote. Thank you, Councillor Foote. Thanks, Councillor Gurung. Yeah, so if you look at the data that we have at the moment for across the whole borough, clearly, and this is true of London as a whole, probably most of the UK, some of the rural areas, is that street drinking has become an increasing problem. Okay, and you're noticing it in your ward there for sure, right? And so, you know, over in Chiswick at the other end, there's still street drinking. What we try to do is look at the data across the borough to try and understand if there are hotspots, and that data has then been supplemented by in the Heston area, Heston Action Group, be a voice for that area because of street drinking, although they take into account a lot of other environmental improvements. So what we've done is look at, as best we can, all of the data that's collected from people like Hounslow Highways, and at the moment Feltham doesn't stand out any more than some of the areas that we've not included. However, what I would say, and this goes back to the fact that cumulative impact policy is not is a 3-year thing, not a 5-year thing, is that if you are really concerned about that in your area, let's get in touch with officers, and then we can also have a look at how they might investigate building some more evidence in your area about what the problems are and assessing what scale those problems are. And that would be very much my suggestion for that, because at the moment, the sort of centrally held data just doesn't, you know, flag up Feltham as being particularly bad in the same way as, say, Heston was, or Hounslow Town Centre. So that would be my advice. I hope that's, you know, a dialogue can then start between yourself and officers, and then we can look at how that might be captured in the future. And, you know, in terms, and this applies not just to you and your ward, councillor, but across the whole of the borough. We have to be very careful about cumulative. We can't apply it to the whole borough, but it needs to be applied to specific areas where there are hotspots. You know, it's a moving feast, right? Things are changing. Sometimes it might be getting worse in one place or worse in another. You might displace street drinking if that's your problem with cumulative impact, or take away nuisance and noise from one area to another by introducing a cumulative impact in this area. It shifts over to this area. So if I can encourage you to speak with the officers, and I'm happy to advise them and you on how that might be taken forward as well.
I think it's fair to say, Bish, that the cumulative impact policy will not allow you to reduce a particular problem at the moment by taking a property, a premises out or a business out. It doesn't allow you to do that. It's about the future and about stopping it growing any more than it is. The way we deal with the current problem is by looking at investigation, wherever necessary, then enforcement and all of those sort of things, and if necessary, calling a licence in and adding conditions to it that would make it maybe a little bit more favourable. But they're things that we can talk about outside this, but it's cumulative impact policy on its own will not deal with that. Okay, Bish?
Yes, yeah, okay. Thank you very much, Chair and Ali. The general question, which is outside the our policy, I don't know whether it's legally we are, if legally I'm correct to raise this thing, because I would like to bring up that the graffiti is very disruptive for us in Hanock Park area. So I don't know if if I may, I would like to ask through Chair, would that be any suggestion that we can put the graffiti license as well?
No, graffiti is not under licensing, Bish, especially as you're talking about stuff that's on motorway walls. You know, it's not even our walls, it's TfL.
And now we got Richard. We got a lot of in our ward, especially we got the in nearby the cemetery, where is the lots of, I think that is that is under the Hanock Park Ward by the Pevensey Road. We've got a lots of the graffiti, and by doing this, I think it would
about licensing. Right, graffiti is not, and it's not within licensed premises. This is on all sorts of ways. It's not a licensing issue.
We can include the special license. So
no, we can't include it as a license. We can't deal with it as a licensing issue.
That will increase if we get, properly introduce and properly let the people to activate, and then it will.
Graffiti is not a licensing issue. We can't deal with it under licensing. It's something else again. But we also.
Okay, what is fit then?
Sorry?
What's the graffiti fit then? Can I have an officer to come up, please?
Right, we'll deal with graffiti in another area, Fish, on another time.
Okay. Take it, all the police.
Okay, right. Have you finished?
Yeah, finished.
Okay, right. I'm going to move on now to Surinder. Councillor Purival.
Hello. Yes. Come in. Am I in? Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you to all the officers who have worked very hard, and actually they have come up with all the changes. Couple of things. I declare first of all that I'm a member of the Heston Action Group. Okay, so we put all these stuff in then, and thank you very much for taking it on board.
Well, you're the troublemaker, are you?
The question I had was that these new rules will not apply to the old licenses, which we have maybe just issued recently, say from 6 o'clock in the morning. But are we the people who are going to have new hours later than that? Would they have a legit claim to complain about this, or can we do anything about it? Raise the 6 o'clock to the new times as well?
Not sure. Are you answering that, Ali, or?
Well, whoever can answer it.
I'm not sure if I quite caught all of the question.
No, the question is that the new licenses will start at a later time than a lot of licenses were in force now. Start early, for example, at 6 o'clock. We've done a few 6 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
So obviously the treatment for both would be different. Would the later ones can say that the next door neighbor can start early, we can't start until 9 o'clock?
Well, we can't do anything about existing licenses, and bear in mind that something like 60% of the current licenses were issued in 2005, 2006, which was the immediate effect of the follow-on from taking them away from magistrates and bringing them to local authorities. So most of them are there, and most of the items that we put in when we're on committee and add items were not around in those days. The only way that can happen is if those licenses are given up, or they're called in, or that's the only way we can change them. Once they've got a license, unless that happens, it remains as is. We cannot introduce retrospectively.
Thank you.
We did try once, a few years back, we tried and got them all together to talk about Save the Strength, and we got a lot of off licenses that agreed at that time to participate in the Save the Strength program. But it needed that sort of level, and it doesn't mean you can get everybody in, but it means they voluntarily agree to have their license altered.
Thank you, Richard. All the other questions I had, I already been answered, so thank you very much. Thank you, the officers.
Okay, thanks, Surinder. I've got Rajwinder.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, officers. I remember last time when we met, I requested to have a look on Phoenix Way, the road which touches from Heston to M4, that is excluded from CIP. So, you know, that road was really a problem in Heston because most during night time the lorries are parked, and it took council nearly 9 months to remove 4 trailers from there, and 1 trailer is still there at the moment. So I've seen the revised amended map, so that road is still excluded from the CIP. So
CIP won't affect lorry parking.
No, but like drivers sleeping overnight and drinking there.
It's not, CIP is nothing to do with lorry parking. The cumulative impact policy is about the additional licensed premises. It's not about parking. You know, that's traffic that deals with that. If there's vehicles that are illegally parking, then, you know, you need to get hold of Mark Frost and get his team to deal with it. But I don't think Vicky would like to be out there trying to sort out lorries or anything.
Okay, Chair. Thank you.
Is there anything else to do with licensing?
No, that's it, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, Regina. Thank you. Right, I'll now move on to Karen. Councillor.
Hi. You'll be pleased to hear I don't have any questions. I think anything that I was sort of thinking about has already been answered. I'd just like to thank you all for the report, and I think the changes all appear to be improvements, particularly the involvement of public health. And yeah, thank you.
Okay, thanks, Karen. John, I saw you there, then you flashed off again.
I've had a long wait. There we are.
You're going to have to change your name to Abraham or something. You know?
That's a very good point, yeah. Can I ask Alistair a couple of questions, please? Can you hear me, Alistair? Well, I'm talking about Ali, sorry. Ali Turnham.
Yep.
He's looking blank.
No, he's frozen.
Ali, can I speak to you? The chap with the beard, sorry. He's taken the 5th.
I think he's frozen.
Yes.
He's taken the 5th Amendment, yeah. Okay, can I switch to Andy first then? Andy. Mr. Devine.
Yes, Councillor.
Yeah, good afternoon, lovely to see you. Just a question I always asked, are all your premises yet online on a computer?
So there is a public register of premises that is available on the web, on the licensing pages.
Good, that's a real update. Yeah, when your colleague, the consultant, was speaking, by way of example, about Osterley, he clearly examined evidence and come to conclusions where some cases were strong, some were weak. Yeah. Why did it need a consultant to tell you that? Do you lack capacity in your department?
Sorry, no, Councillor. I mean, obviously, with the cumulative impact policy and that work, Alistair had been involved in the original cumulative impact policy that had been put in place, and obviously as part of this, for continuity and for the work that we were doing, I wanted to get Alistair back involved to be able to look at the data that we had existing and the information that he had, and being able to do, you know, the visits out that needed to be done and the specific data and information that needed to be gathered with regards to the cumulative impact policy side of things.
Okay, that's very clear, but I'm just speaking overall now. Do you have the capacity to be proactive enough?
I mean, obviously, any complaints that come in. I mean, myself personally, we deal with the licensing application side of things. But any complaints that come in and are dealt with go to our licensing enforcement officer, and they deal with it or contact the premises or the resident or anything that comes in. And obviously, we deal with those complaints or information requests that we get. As and when they come in, I guess is the.
My final point for you, and you've been very helpful, thank you. The actual license hearings, I always think it reminds me of the medieval England. where those with money sit at the table have legal representation, and the poor people at the back don't often see a copy of the actual licensing report. And then the hearing starts and people at the table are actually quoting paragraph numbers. Have you considered about changing the structure and format a bit?
So the structure of the actual committee panel hearings?
The hearing, yes.
I mean, that isn't something I have thought about changing, in all honesty. I mean, there may be something Baljic can come in on that point, if, you know, with regards to actually specifically how we could change, or any points that you wish to raise about how they're changed, Councillor Todd. And obviously,
okay. It's all part of your process, isn't it? Okay.
Yeah, it is. But obviously,
that's very helpful. Can I speak to Andy Turnham? Andy, is it Ali? Sorry.
I think Ali's back in now.
He's frozen as soon as I speak.
Alistair, are you there at the moment?
Yeah, it
Richard,
seems like
can I
he's
make a
still
point?
having connection problems. Sorry. Still looks
Can I
like
make
as
a
if.
very brief point? Scrutiny does some excellent work with West Mid, and they were doing a survey, I think the last one year, 18 months ago, where they were analysing the postcode of the people who attend. And I mean, this was obviously for pre-COVID, but there was a huge number of people who specifically came from TW13. And a lot of that was related to the airport, where they can't get local authority where they live, and they can't get to see doctors because of their role. So there is data there available. But if I can't speak to your Mr. Turnham, I'll move on. Thanks.
Can I just ask a question of you, John? I'm sorry.
Please do.
Yeah, it's Richard. I wasn't quite sure. When you were talking about the people at the back of the room, were you talking about the general public, or people there that were giving evidence, or what?
I was trying to paint a picture. I did a paper to a former solicitor suggesting changes at licensing hearings, and it went in the too difficult box. And I haven't done one for a while, but I mean, I'm not suggesting you're not fair, Richard, but there are times when it's quite difficult for a group where there's a shortage of, licensing hearing papers, that's all.
Yeah, I take your point, John, and yeah,
it's not a criticism of you.
We can discuss, about whether or not there's a way of making it, certainly it should be available online anyway, but that doesn't help much if you've got a great wad. You're not going to
understand that. I mean, this is a very important hearing, and I think you've all done well, by the way. In the absence of the consultant, can I ask you, Andy? Yeah, it's interesting that he mentioned a number of other local authorities in their licensing policy between 20 and 80 pages. If I had time to examine anyone, what are the variations? Are you singing from the same tune, the same theme? Are the Met Police linked for the whole of London or not?
So, Councillor, what I can say on that is obviously that the licensing policy, and any licensing policy within the varying boroughs, there is a general governance, shall we say, that you are following what is required of the Licensing Act 2003. So we can't differ wildly from that, and we cannot come up with our own specific ideas unique to Hounslow. So we do all cover that. I think what probably the difference in the number of pages and where we've tried to improve that is trying to get it to make it clearer for the actual applicants and the people for what they actually have, what they need to do. And that was really coming through in our new LP points, so LP 1 to 11, where we tried to summarize the technical parts of the information that we have to provide within the policy into a very simple, sort of succinct box covering that section, shall we say. So this is what we must put in, and this is what we are governed by, so the Act or any other policies, but the LP, the licensing policy 1 to 11s, are trying to sort of give that as an overview, and so therefore we are reducing, or we have been able to reduce or make it a bit more succinct, our policy compared with others. There may be additional data or larger cumulative impact, or they just want to go into more specific detail in other boroughs, and that's why they have a lot more detail in their policy. But I think we've covered our policy. I feel is good because we've covered the detail, but we've made it succinct and hopefully user friendly for the applicants that wish to open licensed premises within the borough.
Okay. Richard, thank you very much. Andy, thank you very much, Steve.
Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you, John. Right, well, it only leaves me now on the list. I haven't got much to say that everybody else has said. I think most of what we've got in, we talked about core hours. I think that's the right move we've made to go to 9 AM. It's certainly early morning is a problem with street drinkers. I think there's a problem with some of the really old licenses where we need to, where the conditions are and whether or not they're called in. If they're in breach of those, then we should look at that and happen. And I think we call upon the public to assist us in that, in identifying those sort of problems. I think also with the core hours, we should be thinking in the same light about the late night economy, and of course that brings into play a relationship with planning, and I think that also will start to show up over the coming years, that we will all be working a lot closer together with planning, licensing, public health, etc., that where we've got a lot of things that are overlapping, and it's quite important that we do liaise together on that, and I think that would be a lot of the changes. The one area where I'm very concerned about at the moment, and there's absolutely nothing we can do about it, is the applications of TENS. I think it's one thing to talk about, an afternoon party in the park, and entirely different to talk about parties that are taking place in restaurants where the owners of the restaurant are not taking part in it, and we have a personal license holder from out of the borough coming in and running an event, and I just wonder who's actually controlling what's going on in those sort of events. And I don't, I'm unhappy the way that is, but there's nothing we can do about it because it's something that's governed outside, but it is something where I'm worried. And we saw it when we looked at the restaurant in Bell Road and the double stabbing down there, that it became evident that nobody who was running the restaurant was involved in what was going on that night. So I think that, it's an area that we should be lobbying outside of this. I think we should be lobbying government to give us a bit more leeway on TENS about how it's operated, not in a blanket way that it is at the moment. But other than that, I'm very grateful for the report. It's an awful lot of work in there, I know. I've spent all day reading it, and I thought I was going to fall over at one stage. I felt absolutely exhausted by the time I reached the end. And so thank you very much for that. And now I think I'll use that as me having summed up. Before I do go, just in case, is there any councillor member that wishes to come back on any issues that they've made during that? But please keep it very brief if you do. So I'm opening up if there's anybody who wants to come back. I've counted to 10 and I haven't seen any response. I'll assume the answer's no. Right. So we've had a formal mover and seconder, haven't we? I think that was Vikram, and I think so. That's all done.
No, Chair, we haven't actually. That was for the minute item, so we do need someone to move the recommendations and somebody to second the recommendations within the report.
Okay, have I got a mover for the report, please? Richard, are you? I can see your smiling face. Yeah.
Richard Easton here. I'm happy to move the officer's recommendations in the report.
Okay. Have I got a seconder?
I second it, Chair.
Okay, Rajwinder. Okay, so Rajwinder seconds it. So I'm now going to move Let's get round to the right side of the page. Right, we're now moving to the vote. May I remind members that they should only vote if they've heard all of the debate on this report. I will now go along to the members of the committee and ask one by one to ask you confirm you've heard everything in the vote, either for or against the proposal as made or to abstain. I'm aware that during the bad weather there, a number of us were dropping in and out, but I think I was one of those, and I think that I managed to catch up on what, and so I think we've, if I've covered it, I think probably most of all of the other members were able to keep up with the debate that was going on, all things considered. So I'm assuming that there isn't anybody that's saying they didn't hear anything. Yep. So, right, I'm going to move then going down to the vote. So I'll start with Councillor Chowdhury. Can you please state whether or not you are for, against, or you're abstaining?
I'd like to confirm that I've heard the whole debate and I'm for.
Thank you. Unsa?
Hello, Unsa Chowdhury, Austin Spring Grove Ward. I have been present for the entire meeting and I would like to say that I'm also for the report. Thank you.
Good. Councillor Bandha Chopra. Councillor Chopra.
She may need to unmute her mic, Councillor. Councillor Chopra, could you dial *6, please? I believe you are now unmuted, Councillor.
Councillor Chopra, can you hear us? Right, I'm going to move on to Councillor Eason, take his vote, and we'll come back to Bandha Chopra as we go along. So, Councillor Eason. You're on mute, I think. Yeah, you're muted, Richard. That's it.
Apologies. Yeah, Councillor Richard Eason, I've been here for the whole duration of the debate and heard everything, and I'm voting in favour of the recommendations in the report.
Thank you, Richard. Councillor Georgie.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I have been here for the entire meeting and I am voting in favour. Thank you.
Thank you, Adriana. Councillor Giles.
Hi, thank you. I'm Councillor Gabriella Giles. I can confirm that I've been present and that I accept the recommendations within the report.
Thank you very much. Councillor Vikram Garwal.
Thank you, Chair. I'm Councillor Vikram Garwal of Hounslow Heath. I want to confirm that I've been here for the entirety of this agenda item and I'm for it.
Thank you, Vikram. Councillor Bishna Gurung.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'm Councillor Bishna Gurung from Hanover Park Ward. I have been here whole of the meeting and I have heard everything and I'm voting for the officer recommendation for. Thank you.
Thank you, Bishna. Councillor Surinder Purival.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Councillor Surinder Purival has been settled. I was here through all the time and I heard everything and I vote for the recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you, Surinder. Councillor Rajwinder Sidhu.
Thank you, Chair. I confirm that I heard the entire debate and I am for the recommendations of the officers. Thank you.
Councillor Karen Smith.
I can confirm that I've been here for the entire debate and I agree.
Thank you, Karen. Councillor John Todd.
Yeah, I have to say I have been here for over 2 hours listening to every word of the debate and your noisy roof, and I agree with the recommendation without any reservations. Thanks very much.
Thank you, John. I apologise for my roof. It can't speak for itself. I'm just going to go back to see if we've got hold of Councillor Chopra yet. Sadiq, do you know? Can you help?
Councillor Chopra is in the call, Chair.
But we can't.
Councillor Chopper, you are showing as muted, so if you press *6 on your phone and allow it a few seconds as there's a delay, that may allow you to then speak and cast your vote.
Is the call on mute, Councillor?
I think she was muting directly by her phone earlier. Right, well, is that Councillor Chopra's phone number, the one ending 3388?
No, Chair, it's 447.
Oh, I can't see that one up on my screen. Okay. Right, in the meantime, I might as well go to my own vote. It's Councillor Richard Foote. I have been here, and subject to rain and all the other interruptions, to hear the debate and what we've retracked, and I'm voting in favour of the officer's recommendations. Can we go back and try again with Councillor Chopra? Is Councillor Chopra able to do something on chat and put it in? Will it come through?
Algie, you might be able to advise here, but as far as I understand it from a governance perspective, we need to be able to hear the councillor speaking to cast her vote.
Yes, correct.
Richard, Abanna, she wrote down in the chat, say she's agreeing with the report.
Yeah, but it's no good. It's not enough. Not enough. We've just been advised by the legal advisor that she needs to speak. I don't know, is she hearing us? Does anyone know?
Yeah, she can hear us. She can hear us.
Well, she needs to unmute her phone.
Speak now, speak now.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
Richard, I can hear you.
Can you tell us what your vote is, please, Anna?
I've just said, I said it on the chat, but if you want to hear me, I've been trying to unmute, it hasn't worked. I've been sending messages on chat.
Never mind, we can hear you now. So if you can tell us what your vote is.
Okay, so I've heard everything in the meeting. I've been present and taken part, and I've heard what has been proposed by the officers, and I agree with the report.
Thank you very much, Banda.
Thank you.
That makes it 100% on my account. So we have, I think, of the committee, we had Councillor Afzal Kiani, who was absent, but the rest of the committee were here, and we had, that must.
I believe we may have just lost our chair again.
We may just need to give him a few seconds to come back in to just confirm that the report has gone through, but we'll just give him a few seconds.
Look at that. I'm sitting. Shall I stay or go? Ruth?
Yes, to repeat John's question, do we need to wait for Richard to join again?
Members, just to advise, Councillor Foote has been able to get in quite quickly before. We're just waiting for a few seconds more. We're just begging for members' patience just for a moment more.
Thank you.
Hello, Councillor Foote. We were just holding on. I'm not sure if you can hear me. Can you hear me?
Just give him a few seconds.
The vote have been carried by 13 votes.
Sorry, Chair, this is Belgian Verdi here. I don't know if that was clear, but I don't know if that was clear for everybody there.
Members.
Sorry, Chair. It's Belgian Verdi
Is
here.
that you, Belgian? Yeah.
It is. Some of the audio, from my point of view anyway, was not entirely clear. So just to ensure that it did come through clearly, and it's not a problem just with my computer, it might be worthwhile just quickly repeating what you said about the vote.
Yeah, all right, I'll repeat it again. There were 13 votes in favour. There's ringing going on. Yeah. So did you catch that, Belgian?
I did. I just want make sure that the clerks also caught the record of the vote.
Yes, all members present voted in favour. So it's 13 votes for. The committee is 14 and Councillor Chiani was not present. So that's the 13 votes. It's a 100% vote of those present.
Thank you, Chair. We got that for the record.
Okay, good. So there being no other matters to consider, I don't think. Can I please say thank you to you all for attending in somewhat difficult circumstances. Hopefully next time we meet, we won't have a thunderstorm breaking over the top of us. So I will thank you and wish you all good night and good health. So we can all, I call the meeting to a close.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.